All right, welcome to this session, Canadian Organic Vegetable Improvement Project, CANOVI, the power of collaborative networks in organic vegetable variety development. My name is Susana Cabrera-Mariz, and I work at Organic Seed Alliance and as the Pacific Northwest Program Associate, and it's my pleasure to introduce you to the CANOVI project. Before we get started, I'm just going to review the community guidelines. We all have a role in tending this space. During this conference, we agree to speak for ourselves and make space for others, be as present as possible, be aware of who's missing in each conversation. Remember that no one has a monopoly on truth and everyone's experience is valid. Remember to critique ideas, not people, to listen to our bodies and tend to their needs, to give grace for technical and logistical difficulties, and aim for connection, not perfection. The Canadian Organic Vegetable Improvement Project brings farmers, ranchers, researchers, and seed companies together for on-farm evaluation of open pollinated vegetable varieties for ecological and organic systems. This session will highlight the project's impact on seed production, commercialization, and farmer-led plant breeding in Canada. We hope you are encouraged to create or join similar projects to support regional organic seed systems. We have the amazing and incredible Michelle Dang with us here today, and we also have Weijia, Wang, and Craig online, so they're going to be present to answer some questions. So please give us a round of applause for Michelle.
Hi everyone, thanks for being here after many days. And hopefully this is a great session to end off the conference. And yeah, thanks for being here. Today I'm going to be talking about the Canadian Organic Vegetable Improvement Project and how a network of farmers, growers, researchers, and seed companies work together to collaboratively breed organic vegetables. So just as a brief overview of what we're going to be talking about today, I'm going to be doing a brief land acknowledgement, talk about CANOVI, what our goals are and our scope, what kind of crops we focus on, as well as I'm going to be sharing a video of a conversation between me, who works from the nonprofit side, research as a researcher, and then we have a academic breeder at the University of British Columbia, as well as a farmer who's involved in CANOVI, and talking about how all our roles come together so we can collaboratively breed vegetables together. So I just wanted to do a brief land acknowledgement. I'm coming from Toronto, which, for those of you who don't know, Toronto is actually based off of the word in Mohawk, Takaranto, which is where the trees stand still in the water. And as a visitor in this land, I learned recently that the land that we're on today is the Marys River Band of the Klapuya people. And I always think it's really important to be mindful of where we plant our seeds in, because without the land that we, live, play, and work on, we can't grow seeds. And Indigenous peoples across Turtle Island have been, stirring seeds and welcoming settlers onto the land. So just want to be mindful of that as we talk about seeds and breeding and plants. So first, what is CANOVI? A really long acronym, but it stands for the Canadian Organic Vegetable Improvement Project, and it's a Canada-wide on-farm participatory vegetable trialing and breeding network. That's a lot of academic words, but all that to say, academics, farmers, and nonprofit organizers work together to collaboratively breed vegetables together. And the context as to why this is so important is because in Canada, we don't really have any public vegetable breeding programs, especially not for organics. And so This program runs in collaboration with the University of British Columbia Centre for Sustainable Food Systems, as well as the Bauta Initiative on Canadian Seed Security. And CANOVI is an established network now, but it started as a grassroots kind of project from growers in BC who wanted to trial different vegetable varieties and see how they performed in their regional environment. And at the time, there were programs in the States like NOVIC, which is the Northern Organic Vegetable Improvement Program, where they just trialed different varieties, sent seeds out to farmers to see what grew well in their region. And so we wanted to establish an official program that could serve growers who were looking for organic vegetable seed that worked well in their region, that they could then adapt to their own regions or use for whatever breeding, variety trialing, selection work in their own regions. And yeah, over time, it's established into a great program that, this shows all the different groups and people who are involved in this network. And mainly it's farming organizations, academic researchers, and different seed companies and growers and seed stewards. And we also partner not only with Canadian organizations, but also, as you can tell, we also partner with Organic Seed Alliance, who lovingly shares seeds with us that we can share with our growers and help us work towards using some of that germplasm that exists out there and that diversity to breed things for our regional environments. And so, as part of CANOVI, we don't only do variety trialing and participatory plant breeding, but we really want to share germplasm or bring diversity in the germplasm and make it accessible to growers out there, as well as provide education and training in how you can do on-farm variety trials or on-farm breeding. And so we host a range of things like field days. As you can see here, this was a field day for our heat-tolerant lettuce trial that we did in Ontario, but we also hold virtual webinars that anyone is welcome to attend. And this is just a little collage of kind of the scope of how far CANOVI reaches, but also some of the resources that we make in order to make variety trialing and on-farm breeding work more accessible. So you can kind of see the geographical breadth of how many growers participate. We do field days. We also create protocols and result summaries so that at the end of every season, growers can see how well varieties did in their regions. We also have fun tasting events so that participants and the general public can be part of this breeding process. We try to do our best to engage as many people as possible in our breeding network. So this is just a fun photo of all the crops that we've worked on, past and present. So all the top photos, we work with radicchio, rutabaga, and bell peppers. Currently, our focus is on carrots, lettuce, and most recently, bok choy that we're doing a pilot on this year, but we'll be expanding in the next year. And so a fun fact is since 2018, over 100 farmers have evaluated and grown 50 vegetable varieties through multi-year on-farm trials. And this is great because a lot of the times when you do variety trials, just having 1 year of data may not show you the whole picture. And so by trialing the same varieties over multiple years, especially with climate change, it's really important for us to link agronomic performance to all those weather and climate changes that have been happening. And this is a field day that we had in Atlantic Canada where they were doing on-farm selections for the carrots that we've been working with. And so with CANOVI, the main outcomes we hope to achieve with it are to increase awareness to regional seed companies who grow ecological OP seed. So for most of the varieties that we include in our variety trials, we source them largely from regional seed companies all over Canada and try to bring awareness to the work that they're doing so that not only gardeners, but farmers learn about different types of OPs out there that could perform well in their farming conditions. We also try to advance agronomic development of organic vegetable varieties for local or ecological growing systems. And the best way that we do that, at the end of the season, we usually send out a report directly to the seed companies that we sourced from, so they get a summary of the type of performance that their varieties did in different environments. And so that way, for those seed companies, they know whether or not they should make improvements, getting feedback from gardeners or farmers who grew them out and like making adjustments as necessary. And for those who want to do breeding projects, they have an understanding of which varieties may perform really well in a specific trait of interest that they're looking for. And lastly, we hope through CANOVI we can advance farmer research skills and knowledge in on-farm breeding trials. And here is a photo that a farmer submitted of the radicchio variety trials that they did in Alberta, and it really showcases all the diversity of the radicchio that was grown across this trial. And so where we are now, the main aspects of this work that we're focusing on is incorporating more genetic, ecophysiological, and functional trait research into our trial and breeding program. That is a lot of academic words. And the reason why this is a priority for us is we do this work in a paradox where when we communicate what we do to funders or academics, they want to see scientific evidence that what we're doing is useful, but in order to convince them, we need the money and the funding and support to do it. But they're like, oh, but there's no evidence. And I'm like, yeah, but you need to give us the money and first to like get the evidence for you. And so we're trying to push through publishing in the scientific literature so that there is information and data that other organic breeders or farmers or organizations can use as a baseline foundation for information in accessing funding or government support for this work. We also are doing a lot of participatory breeding for our lines of carrots that grow well in East and West Coast growing. I know Oregon is like the epicenter of carrot seed production, but carrot seed production is very challenging in Canada, and we want to build more capacity, infrastructure, and resilience so that farmers can do that themselves. So in that, we've had to work really hard to do several rounds of breeding in order to like push the baseline of different carrot lines towards something that grows more easily and grows well for seed in Canadian climates. And the last thing, we are wrapping up some old multi-year trials. So this is our last year of lettuce trials, and we are happily moving over to bok choy. So yeah, and this is a photo of the carrot breeding and seed production work that we started this January that will hopefully get seeds for in the spring in BC. And so if you want to learn more about CANOVI, you can always reach out to me or visit our website. And also, a fun thing, we are hiring a postdoc for this position, and we wanted to advertise here because what better way to advertise that we're hiring? Yeah, and you can take a photo of that. You can share it with whoever you know, or someone you know who knows someone who knows someone. This is a great crowd, so hopefully someone knows someone who knows someone who knows someone. To kind of continue this conversation, so we're going to be talking with Craig Boychuk, who's a seed farmer and owner of No Coast Seeds. He's been participating in CANOVI for several years. We also have Weijia Wang, who is currently the postdoctoral fellow for the CANOVI project. And then there's me, who's the research coordinator of SeedChange, who works with these folks to do this work. And unfortunately, Weijia and Craig could not be here today unexpectedly. So as an emergency tactic, we do have a pre-recorded video that we filmed to kind of speak to the different aspects of CANOVI and how, what each of us bring to the table and our perspectives of addressing, you know, the benefits of this program, but also the challenges. So I'm gonna play it now. To ask, what is your area of work and expertise, and how has it fit into CANOVI? Craig, feel free to start.
Sure. Yeah, so I grow seed crops and do plant breeding here in Treaty 4 territory near Calder, Saskatchewan. And I started the project in 2019 and launched in 2023. So this is, I guess, going into year 6. And yeah, CANOVI has been, I started in 2020, and as, I don't know if I had any like specific goals, but I wanted to, I saw it as a way to just like, you know, get some insight on new varieties and things that might work well here. So I was participating in some trials, and now this year it's kind of evolved from there into submitting selections for breeding projects. So yeah, I think CANOVI has really helped me to up my game in terms of making meaningful and useful observations on the farm. I think is probably the biggest thing where it's really helped me out. But yeah, it's been really great for finding new varieties and for kind of advancing my education at the same time.
Well, yeah, Craig, you're so good at making spreadsheets for breeding work. So yeah, really impressive. Weijia, how about you? What is your area of work or background, and how did you get involved with CANOVI?
Sure. So I started to work as a postdoc researcher with this program in 2023 when I just graduated with my PhD degree in plant breeding and genetics from Michigan State University in the US. So my role with CANOVI is to lead the project from the UBC end while collaborate closely with Michelle, who represents the NGO end from SeedChange. So this project fits not only like my expertise in plant breeding and genetics, but also my personal interests in organic agriculture. So I have enjoyed working with CANOVI from the university, and yeah.
Cool, yeah, and just a bit from my end. So I work at the Bauta Initiative, which is a program of SeedChange, and we work with farmers, industry, academics to advance the quality, quantity, and diversity of seed. And when CANOVI was starting as a regional project, we really wanted to support that project by bringing a network of farmers who we knew were interested in CANOVI to strengthen the program and broaden its reach. And yeah, as Weijia mentioned, I joined working with CANOVI in 2023, and it's been really lovely to connect everyone and, you know, create resources and share knowledge and like support farmers in like figuring out what varieties work for them and things like that. So yeah, it's been really great. Speaking of, you know, supporting farmers and seed and how CANOVI has been able to do that, can you speak to any specific ways that CANOVI has supported your work so far, or like taught you something new in relation to something that you wanted to learn more about? Weijia, feel free to go.
Oh, sure. Yeah. So I really like CANOVI project, which is a little different from what I have done during my PhD degree. Is this is a nationwide network. I really like that, and I really think it's very valuable to have this network. I have been learning a lot during my past 1.5 years work, and I really enjoyed getting direct feedbacks from growers. As a breeder, I think it's very important that our breeding program is kind of tailored specifically to growers' needs. So I really appreciate the opportunity to learn directly from the growers, the professionals in each of the regions. I enjoy learning. I enjoy learning from all our regional coordinators during all the meetings we have. So yeah, I think that really like brought my research to a different level compared to before. I worked for just in 1 or 2 specific regions, but now like we get data from nationwide growers, which is very, very meaningful.
Yeah, so Weijia, you touched a bit on like that the breeding and variety development with CANOVI is different from what you're used to. So like, I mean, I personally know that, you know, you did breeding in a more of like a lab setting when you were doing your PhD. Like, can you speak to how that that way of breeding, like what that's like compared to the type of breeding that you're doing at UBC?
Sure. Yeah. So before I came to work for CANOVI, I had years of experience working with dry beans. In that set, we usually make our goals based on from our like research perspective. But here at CANOVI, it's more like we hear from the growers every year, and we really focus on what are the real needs of the growers. And also, the way we run the breeding program is different. As before, we usually just make the crosses in the greenhouse and do our own trials in the field. But in CANOVI, we send out the varieties to the growers, and we ask the growers to make the selections. In this way, the decentralized trial really help us to make the selections based on the growers' needs and based on the diverse environments each farms are located. And this is very different from what I used to do.
Cool. Yeah. How about you, Craig? Is there something that you've learned in CANOVI that's been really useful, or like a specific example of something that's been interesting or educational?
Yeah, I guess I kind of maybe touched on it before, but I guess I'm kind of coming from the opposite end of things, where I'm like totally self-taught, just, you know, doing stuff on the farm. And for me, it's been really helpful to have the access to, well, I guess being provided information that I maybe didn't necessarily think I needed, but also just being able to access professionals who know the answer for anything I might want to know in terms of just like techniques or, you know, any number of like technical things. And in general, I just think it's really improved my observational capacity and like my ability to evaluate stuff in like fairly short order. Like if I didn't have the structure of like knowing kind of how to properly set up a trial and go through it and like take meaningful information from it, I don't think that I would be doing as well with my own projects as I am right now. So yeah, it's really kind of pushed me forward in and pushed my learning forward quite a bit in a way that's been like really helpful. So.
Cool. Yeah. I feel like for me, the thing that I learned is like similar, but more on a coordination end. So like kind of speaking to what Weijia said on, when you breed for things in a formalized breeding program, there are like specific priorities that you want to reach when you're selecting for things and breeding for things. But like working with CANOVI over such a large geographical area, you know, we know like that obviously there are different climates across Canada that people want to breed and select for. But to me, the interesting thing is like hearing from farmers that they want to select for things that aren't necessarily climate related. So for example, flavor and color of a variety. And, an example of it is with the carrots that we're working with. In Ontario, which is a province in Canada, the growers that we were working with love sweet carrots. Like they just want the sweetest carrot, versus the growers that we've been working with in Quebec, like a bit more of like a florally tasting carrot, not something that's too sweet. And to me, it kind of speaks to the fact that there are so many different breeding priorities across regions that like breeding for one thing won't meet all the different things that different markets and growers across Canada want. And I think that's the cool thing with participatory breeding, because like everyone can put in a little bit of what they like into like a bigger breeding pool. But also something that we're trying to do more of this year is creating different lines depending on different regional priorities. So we can kind of meet different markets and different groups of growers, which has been really cool. That you wouldn't often do in a breeding program, because it's like bringing a lot of people in. So that's been cool.
Yeah, exactly. Michelle, since you mentioned that, so I really like how we let growers to decide whether they want to send us their selection back, so we can continue the breeding process where they can keep them to themselves so they can select for their own needs. So that's really neat for this program, I think.
Yeah, great point. So another question that I have that's specifically for Craig, can you speak to any varieties or advanced lines you really loved working with while participating in CANOVI?
Yeah, sure. I guess if you want to stick with the carrots, from this year, there was a breeding line called F7119B. It was a orange Nance carrot line. Is it Nance? Nantes? I don't know. Nance. Anyway, that one was developed by Phil Simon from the University of Wisconsin, and it was I don't know. I guess sometimes when you're doing trials, you always want to like kind of find that one outstanding variety, or like something that's just like really going to knock your socks off, but it doesn't necessarily happen every time. But this was a case of where this one variety just did way better than everything else that I had in terms of I guess uniformity and just disease resistance was a big one, because most of my varieties, I have a lot of aster yellows disease pressure in my gardens, which in carrots makes those like really coarse hairy roots, and I had a lot of that this year. But in this one variety, there was hardly anything. And it was just really great. But when it started out, it was like the plants the germination was kind of crappy, and the plants themselves didn't really put on a really great canopy. So at first I was sort of like, oh, this is going to be probably the worst one in the bunch. And it ended up being the best one. And so, I don't know, that was kind of cool. Like nice surprises like that are really fun. And I'm just really excited to find a variety that is like clearly way better at, overcoming this or resisting this disease than pretty much any other variety I've tried so far in the garden. So yeah, that one's been pretty exciting for me. I'm looking forward to working with it some more.
Cool. And is this the first time you've worked with like an advanced breeding line that hasn't been commercialized yet?
No, I think that we had access to a couple lines from OSA previously, as well as maybe there was a CANOVI line. Or no, I think that was from this year.
But they're all yeah.
Yeah, it's all been carrots. So yeah, this one, I don't know, it just really stood out. So I'm pretty excited about it.
Yeah, like I'd be interested to hear. So like the context with Craig is Craig likes to work with a lot of diverse populations. And Craig, when you release different Grexes or diverse populations through your seed company, do you usually start with like OPs or OSSI varieties that are just like available for you to start any like breeding and selection work, or like would it be useful for you to have access to like advanced breeding lines that maybe are they're not commercialized yet, but like they may have like a trait or something that you'd be interested in? Like what's
sorry. Yes. Absolutely. It's very cool to have access to these things. And I would like to explore that more. Because I don't know. Yes. Often there's, that one thing that just kind of shows up and it's really exciting, but that's not to say that working with other finished varieties is limiting in any way. Actually, I just attended a webinar with Michael Mazurek about cucurbit breeding, and one of his things is that you always want to start like crossing an elite with an elite, like a really highly advanced, already excellent line. So I think in that way, using commercially available stuff is great, because you can cut out a lot of the middle ground work from that you need to do, taking something that's kind of in its early stages to a more refined place. But often these breeding lines have, just that one special thing. And especially if you're going to be adding it into a breeding pool that's already fairly diverse, it's really great to, get that one excellent trait, because you're not necessarily worried about diluting it too much with other stuff. So yeah, I don't know. That's kind of how I think about it, but yeah.
Yeah, and that totally makes sense. And I think that's why, with a lot of our variety trials, the way that we set it up is we'll have an advanced line that either we are developing, a partner is developing, or a farmer is developing, and have the variety trial compare it to already commercialized varieties to see how they compare agronomically and marketability wise. And that's been like great for like benchmarking how well it's progressed. But also most of the varieties that we include in our variety trials are OPs. So if someone wanted to take one of the varieties and put it into a breeding, like do breeding work with it or selection work or whatever, that's totally possible because they are OPs, which has been great. Cool. And, we've spoken a lot about like the breeding side, the agronomic side. Weijia, I just wanted to ask you kind of to speak more a bit to the lab side of things. So for you and other researchers that we're working with, I mentioned that we're doing some genetic work, some ecophysiological work, some functional trait work, whatever that means, which I bring that up to say, like, can you speak more to these different other areas of research that we're doing and, what benefits that research has in relation to CANOVI?
Sure. But before I answer this question, I really want to mention, I'm so glad to hear that Craig mentioned the F7119 breeding line because that's the line I brought back from Dr. Phil Simon's field trial at El Centro in California. Because when I started to work with CANOVI, I feel like we should bring more advanced breeding lines to this project, just so that we have more options to work with. So it was a really nice opportunity for me to have the chance to visit his field, and he has been so generous about all his breeding lines. So I walked through all the breeding lines he had, and then I found this one, and I really like this one. So I brought it back to Canada, and we requested seeds from Dr. Phil Simon, and so that's how we could send out seeds to our growers to try them, and I'm so happy that it worked well for you. That's and for Michelle's question about the lab side, the like more scientific side of this project, there have been two major efforts that we have been spending time on. So one is at UBC, we're trying to use the genomic information from carrots. So there is a collection also, because we have this collaboration with Dr. Phil Simon. They already collected the genomic information from hundreds of land race and the wild carrots accessions we could work with. So we're using the genomic information combining with the environmental factors, for example, the temperature, the soil condition, etc. With that information, we try to identify the genetic controls of the environmental adaptation of the carrots. And with that, we want to develop genetic markers that we can use in our breeding population to try to accelerate the breeding and selection process, identify the controls, the genetic controls in our varieties to the changing climates. So that's one thing we have been doing at UBC. It's in process. And another one is at University of Toronto, as Michelle mentioned. So we have Dr. Marnie Isaac and her students. They have been collecting physiological and chemical traits of the carrots that were in our field trials. So they have been, I think in 2023, they have been collecting the data from different farms that were participating in CANOVI carrot trials from the different varieties. They have been collecting those data and trying to explore the relationship between the physiological characteristics and other functional traits of carrots and the environment, kind of to see how the carrots respond to different environments and how all the functional traits related to the environment. So that's the two major projects we have been doing in the universities.
Cool. And just like as a knowledge thing, can you like explain what a functional trait is and give like an example of one?
Yeah. So for example, they have been collecting so like the canopy size, I should have the list of somewhere, but anyway, they have, for example, they measure the leaves of the carrots and the size of the carrots itself, and they also measure some chemical traits of the carrots, and they also use those data to make some calculation. I don't have that in my head right now, but hopefully, I think the student who is working on this will have publication related to this project, so we will have more details.
Cool. I just visited Marnie's lab, so I can like give an example because it's fresh in my mind. But like for example, you mentioned canopy size, where more leaves can potentially lead to more photosynthetic activity, so that could be useful for a plant that's bred for, and often like plants bred for organic systems have a bigger canopy size because it allows for weed suppression. So that's an example of something. Where you mentioned root size, and a bigger root structure can lead to more nutrient uptake, for example, and that's something like Marnie's looking into. And yeah, they're functional traits because they're not necessarily anything that is yield related, but it's like a functional trait of the plant that then influences how well a plant will grow later, which is cool. Yeah.
Thanks for adding that. I should, if there is a chance, I should have visited them, but haven't had a chance to actually visit their site.
Yeah, I mean, I think that is one of the challenges of having such a decentralized network of people working on CANOVI. So it is what it is. Yeah, and I think that kind of leads me into a next question of having... Okay, so the question that I asked the panel was, just from their perspectives, what challenges they experienced in their work. If I remember correctly, Weijia mentioned the fact that sometimes when doing participatory plant breeding, it can be hard to deal with crop failure or like having a hard time getting in touch with farmers, because just from like her perspective, where she's doing a lot of the breeding side on behalf of farmers, if the population isn't big enough or they didn't get enough plants to produce enough seed, it can really slow down the breeding process, which can make the work more challenging because like breeding something in a lab setting has more checks and balances in place. But yeah, it's kind of like the nature of participatory plant breeding. Craig said that he felt really supported in this work, and I pressed him really hard on if you could find one thing that we could do better, please let us know. And he was actually very happy, which made me happy. Yeah, and then for me, I believe I had said sometimes communication can be challenging just from a coordination management side, because in a room full of farmers, we all know that when you get an email someone asking you for something, you're not going to reply, especially if you're really busy. And with CANOVI, we have a lot of soft deadlines and we have a lot of hard deadlines. And I was talking to someone outside about how we manage, we coordinate communications. So usually we send an email, and then we send 2 emails, and then we send a 3rd email, and then maybe we'll get your phone number and then call you. But with that, the way that CANOVI works, with a lot of the work, we provide stipends for the farmers that we work with to kind of provide some subsidy for the labor that they're doing in this breeding work. And if a farmer experiences a crop failure, or even they totally forgot that they had signed up for something like this, we give them the option to still receive a partial subsidy if they feel like they did something that they require compensation. And so with that, I was like, yeah, like, you know, sometimes it's, you know, when you're working, you feel like the deadlines in your head have to be very concrete, but finding a way to make things flexible for farmers can be challenging on the coordination side if we need carrot roots in storage right away and a farmer who is across the country hasn't mailed us their roots. But yeah, and I think from there I had asked Craig directly if he felt like the way that we were communicating could be better, or in what ways we could adapt that. And he said that he was totally fine with us emailing him once a week until he was ready to hear that. And he said that he's also appreciated that we have emailed out results at the end of the season, so that way, you know, again, when you participate in this work, you can kind of forget that you're even part of it. And so like directly receiving agronomic results or like progress on the breeding project in a accessible report where you can read it on your own time has been really useful. And yeah, and checking in throughout the season was really helpful for him. I think I also asked, in what way could CANOVI be improved in relation to how you feel like this work is impacting not just what you do personally in your work, but the greater organic seed movement in Canada. And I had said, another challenge that I'm just remembering, I'm improvising. I just remembered that another challenge that I outlined is that the funding that we receive for CANOVI can be really challenging to access simply because there's not a lot of funding for public breeding programs or projects in Canada. And so we, on the academic and NGO side, are constantly applying for grants that take a lot of time and effort to write, and we don't always get them. And every couple years we have to keep applying for grants to keep this work going, and it's really hard to make a case for giving farmers a stipend for doing this amazing work that they're doing. And so because we're in a very precarious funding situation, a safeguard that we have that we're trying to incorporate more in the future is working with farmers in our network who are really interested in the material that we're developing, so that hopefully that doesn't happen, but in the case that we run out of funding, we have a farmer who may want to continue that line in the future through their own seed company, or a group of growers that are in proximity to each other and can continue that work collaboratively. But also a good thing about that is that it kind of creates a soft plan for commercialization in the case that if anyone in the future, the public wants to access that line, or eventually variety will become part of a farmer seed company, or accessible just through a farmer, even if it's not through a seed company. Asking about like how they see this work in the broader seed movement, and Craig was like, I didn't even realize that, in a way CANOVI is acting as an agronomic extension in Canada, even though we don't operate through the government. But we really try our best to be ready at any time if growers have any questions about what we're doing, or need any help in the field. And that's really lacking in Canada. And that was kind of like the goal of when we made CANOVI into an official program. In what ways could we basically act as a public breeding program and support growers in how they breed things and anything seed production related and things like that. I'm trying to remember if there was other things in the video, and my improv skills are failing me now. But that's all I remember from the rest of the conversation. Weijia and maybe Craig are available, so if they remember anything else, they're welcome to share. But also, I love to open it up to questions.
Alice, do Weijia or Craig have anything to share with us? Okay, give them a minute. And for everyone in this room, if you have questions, I can either bring the mic to you or you can come down here. We have to be sure to speak into the mic because we have people on Zoom who are listening and part of this program, and they can't hear you if you're sitting in your seat. You've got to speak into the mic.
Hi. Well, first of all, congratulations. It's a great job you are doing there. My respect. My name is Almendra. I am from Argentina, and I coordinate a participatory breeding organization. And my question is about planning and flexibility. You said that at the end of each season you share reports of agronomic progress. So my question was, at what extent the process is planned, and you say, well, we have this target with these years, and to what extent it is flexible, and you are giving feedback on what happened. That is what we do, that we are less, yeah.
Yeah, thanks for that question. So I'm just going to use a common growing season in Canada. So in late winter, spring is when, or over the winter, we write the protocol of what we want to do, and then we usually send it to all our partners and be like, can you notice anything that needs to be revised or anything like that? In early spring is when we usually do recruitment for whatever crop that we're working with. So we usually send out a survey, or we do a social media or email blast of, if you're interested in this crop and you want to participate, just sign up through this form. During that time, so luckily CANOVI is a established program now, so we usually just at the beginning of the season set a cap for how many participants we can afford to have, and that includes like considering farmer stipends, but also how much seeds and shipping would cost. So for example, with our lettuce program this year, we're accepting 50 participants, so we in advance order 50 amounts of seed for 50 people. Collect all their addresses, and then usually at the beginning of the summer, because with the lettuce it's a heat-tolerant child, so we want folks to grow the lettuce in the hottest weather in the summer, and we send that out in May. So usually we try to aim to send the seeds out at least 3 to 4 weeks before growers plant them out. We've learned in the past when we don't give them enough time, they start emailing us being like, why aren't my seeds here? And it gives them also enough time to like plan out how much space in the greenhouse they need and things like that. And then usually throughout the summer, we let them do their own thing. We have a protocol that outlines all the deadlines, but also we pre-write emails during the protocol development time and just mass send out reminders to farmers. And then we just continue doing that throughout the summer. If necessary, if you have the time, we found it really useful if you notice a grower isn't participating, or it's good to like reach out to them personally. We find that if you send out an email blast, farmers don't ever respond, but the moment you send them an individual email, they'll respond right away usually. And then we usually have an end date of like, for example, with the heat-tolerant lettuce, it usually should be done by September because it's not hot anymore. So we found it really useful to set a public deadline and a private deadline. So what that means is we email farmers and say, we need the data by this day. And usually most of the farmers will send us the data. But actually, the deadline is later. And that way there's leeway for whoever's coordinating to email farmers individually, just check in and be like, hey, can you submit your data or things like that. Another strategy is saying you cannot get your money until you give us the data, or let's say, again, like a farmer not having the data, just be like, okay, well, you just have to let me know if things didn't work out, and then we can still process your partial stipend in that way. And that's been a good system for us the last 2 years. And so internally, we hope to have results done before Canadian farmers do their seed order the next year. So for us, that means rushing to get everything done before December, which is like on the research like backside, that makes the fall actually a very busy season because that's when all the data's coming in. That's when you need to process all your invoices and like be emailing farmers. And then usually we also write a report that summarizes all the results. And then we also host a webinar that lets farmers come together and talk about their seasonal experiences. Another thing that we do that we also make, we send out a form to farmers asking for their feedback on how the season went, if they have any positive or negative feedback for us on how we can make things better. And that has been really helpful in making adjustments for the next year so that things are more flexible or things are more equitable. Or another useful thing in that survey is we ask growers, do you still want to grow this crop again, or do you want to do another crop? And that usually gives us the information where we can start planning ahead for a new crop for the next year. So that's usually what a year looks like for us when we plan CANOVI.
Hi. I also would like to congratulate you for the great work because I've been part of a CANOVI trial in 2020. It was a blast. We had really fun doing
lovely.
it. Unexpected results. By example, we tried a lot of different carrots and we tasted them with the woofers that were present, and we noticed that not everybody had the same opinion on the carrots. There was a strong divergence between the team, but we finally realized that we were satisfied with the carrot varieties we were growing beforehand. So it was unexpected, but that was fun for us. And yeah, I'd like to know how can I not miss the boat in the next following years to be part of that again, and if the Radicchio trial is still ongoing, I'd like it a lot.
Cool, so lovely for you to share your experience. I didn't expect a CANOVI grower to be here, so this is amazing. Yeah, actually, you bring up another point that I forgot to bring up in the presentation, but now I'm remembering was in the discussion. So I mentioned the fact that we write summary reports for this work, but another aspect of sharing results is we use an app called SeedLinked, where it's an app where you can record, where it's the way that we collect data, but we basically set up our evaluation sheet on this app, and you can provide all your ratings directly onto your phone or your computer. And the nice thing about it is that it saves all the data that you provided, but then it also compares it to what other growers are submitting. And there's a mechanism that you can provide comments or also photos of how the varieties that you're working with are doing. And the great thing about that is, what was your name? Felix said he realized that all the varieties we trialed sucked compared to what, okay, I'm paraphrasing, but the nice thing about it is that you can find something that works really well for your farm, and sure, maybe a variety scored on average higher compared to what the national average was, but at the end of the day, you can still go back to what you rated something and make a judgment on what's best for your farm or your seed production or your market, and reference back to that and make a choice that's good for your farm. But also, if you ever need to go back and access, which variety was it that I tried that one time that maybe in the future you want to try again, it records all that data and then you can cross-reference it back. Yeah, and that's been useful to the growers that we have, because the app gives more instantaneous results. So if any of you really proactive growers out there do order your seeds before December, January, you can use your SeedLink data to make a seed order. If you want to do that before we usually do our December webinar on the CANOVI results.
Okay, we had some questions online. We had one about what kind of data that the farmers collect from you, and also Weijia responded about the data that the farmers collect. So in other words, or how they collect data. You use SeedLink to collect the agronomic data from the growers. The agronomic traits include germination, vigor, bolt resistance, appearance, flavor, marketability, overall performance, etc. And the traits can vary from trial to trial and year to year. So I think the first question, though, was also about what kind of data the farmers collect from you.
Yeah, so kind of mirroring what Weijia said, we usually have a standard list of traits that we collect data from on a 1 to 5 rating. So things like germination, vigor, marketability, and just like overall how much you liked a variety. So with the different crops that we work with, sometimes there's like a trait of interest that we then add to the evaluation rubric that we make. So with lettuce, and this season we're this season we're going to be doing bok choy. The 2 traits of interest that farmers highlighted they were interested was bolt resistance. And so on the evaluation rubric, there is information, or there's a trait on how well did your lettuce not bolt in the field. And so, yeah, we mainly focus on the agronomic data, but on SeedLinked, you can submit photos and qualitative observations. And in the past, we haven't really done anything with the qualitative observations, but this past season, in attempts to include more farmer observations and kind of provide more holistic data on how these variety trials went, I did include a lot of farmer observations on different varieties. And I did that because some farmers literally do not care about the numbers of it. Like, they don't care that you gave that carrot a 4 for marketability. They want to know, like, can you describe the color to me? Can you describe the texture to me? And so, this year, a change I made was that I included more qualitative observations. And that's also just really fun because you can compare those observations to how the varieties looked and how that variety looked in a farmer's field or like at the market. And that's been really lovely.
Sorry, was there more questions online? No? Okay. I'm Abir. I work with Michelle. I'm not trying to be a plant here to ask her a question, but we've talked about how we can use CANOVI to better support not just farmer-led plant breeding, but regional seed production, but our thinking on the varieties that we include in the trials have changed over time. And I'm wondering if you could talk a little bit about that evolution and also the challenges for sourcing regional varieties to include in the trial. Thanks.
Yeah, so from my understanding, kind of what I mentioned in my presentation, before CANOVI became CANOVI, it was farmers in BC who just wanted to access seed that potentially grew well in their region, and they did that all by themselves, and we wanted to expand that. And I think the challenging thing is for some farmers, they really care about the agronomic aspect of it. So, they still want the F1s, or they still order from Johnny's because it's easy. But as CANOVI has developed over time and we've accessed more resources from different funders, we realized how we could use it to highlight all the amazing breeding and regional seed production that different growers in Canada were doing. And so one of the things that we realized that would be really useful is, so with a lot of the work that we're doing, we often have a check variety of a standard variety that a lot of farmers like to grow as an F1 or the most common variety that does the thing that they want it to do. And then we also source regional OPs from different seed companies across Canada to see, when we do these trials, is there one that can, let's say, in one sense, you could find an OP that does just as well as the F1, but then also maybe you find an OP that doesn't perform as well, but, it has a quality that you really like and you really value, and then you can incorporate that and replace a hybrid in your production, but also highlighting that by supporting regional seed, you can also save seed from that and, do your own seed production, but also support regional seed companies that are increasing the diversity of seed that we have in Canada. And this, this idea has become even more important in the last couple months because of the political situation that we're in. And there's now even like a bigger incentive and motivation to strengthen our domestic seed system. And also, you never know when a seed variety that everyone really liked becomes unavailable. And the most recent example of that is in our heat-tolerant lettuce trials. We have a variety called Gentilina, which we sourced through Fruition Seeds, who is no longer, selling seeds. And we were like, what do we do? And thankfully, we were able to get that seed for the trial. But I think one of our big shifts this year is that we're really going to try to find a Canadian grower, or Canadian seed company who is willing to take that seed on. And I think through these multi-farm trials or multi-year trials on different farms, you really see, again, the uncertainty with seed availability and seed diversity that we're currently facing as a result of lack of government funding for agriculture, lack of support for regional seed companies or seed stewards. So I think through this work, if we can promote regional seed companies and regional seed diversity, that's become a very big message as part of this program.
I wonder what problems you have with Queen Anne's lace, because that's the biggest issue here with respect to having any breeding happening with carrots in the farm sector. Is virtually everybody's got Queen Anne's lace growing all along the sides of their farms and along the roads.
Yeah, so broadly, a lot of the carrot seed production in Canada is done on the West Coast because they don't have any or as much Queen Anne's lace pressure where they are. In Ontario or the East Coast, where there is a lot of Queen Anne's lace pressure, usually you'll have to grow in a cage or a tent or in a greenhouse. But I heard through a coworker that there's a grower in Quebec who he has been doing seed production for carrots for many years now. And the way that he deals with this is that he goes into town and into his fields with a lawnmower and he mows all the Queen Anne's lace down, and he tells everyone why he's doing it. But and he says it's been really helpful in reducing the accidental cross-pollination pressure, but he still also does put pollination tents in his fields when he grows his carrots out.
Hi, thank you so much for this presentation. It's been really lovely to just hear what's going on. For those who I haven't met, I'm one of the researchers that came in at the beginning of this project, and I guess a reflection I've been having that I'm curious if you have any thoughts or anybody else has thoughts to just think through with me is how this project is both, trying to support and scale up regional seed systems, local seed systems, Canadian seed systems, and at the same time, it's such a beautiful example of cross-border collaboration that's woven in through it. And I myself came in as an American researcher, and now I'm Canadian. And the project has benefited so much from the amazing resources in the USDA germplasm program, including the things that have been given to us either directly from Phil Simon or Michael Mazurek at Cornell. Sorry, Phil Simon is University of Wisconsin, Michael Mazurek at Cornell and OSA, and then like has taken that material forward. I guess the question, so this is kind of a comment, sorry. But I just wanted to share that, like, I think it's such an example of how, like, our seed networks are between people. And at the same time, we do need to have this idea of Canadian seed security is becoming more important. I mean, it always was, but it's even more, like, urgent. So I'm curious if you or Weijia or Craig, anybody, or Abir have thoughts about, like, how this project fits into and is in conversation with the broader seed sovereignty movement as an example, or as the way that we've benefited from it, or ways that we might be part of that in the future. Sorry, kind of a vague question.
Yeah, I just want to highlight that Alex is being humble. She's the founder, in a way, of CANOVI. Like, she walked, she could walk, so I could run. But yeah, I mean, at least for me, I think the way that CANOVI specifically really contributes to, like, Canadian seed security is not only the fact that, you know, we're running a breeding program and we're trying to do seed education and training, but the fact that we are a very flexible breeding program. You know, despite all these amazing things I've said, we've had, in previous years, we've had, like, seed failures with some of our carrots, and that's been really challenging because, you know, we put so much time and effort to trying to make sure everything goes perfectly. Or, for example, the fact that we're trying to develop a West Coast carrot population last year, and all the West Coast growers got distracted with other things and couldn't send in roots. But Craig sent in roots, and apparently they were amazing. And as a result of that, we decided to grow out his roots for seed. And so Craig is in kind of like central Canada, and in central Canada, we realized that carrot seed there has really low germination for unknown reasons, and we couldn't pinpoint it. And from the fact that Craig was the only person in central Canada and even like West Canada who sent in roots, we realized, hey, maybe we should change that breeding priority so that those carrots are more locally adapted to central Canada. And that way, growers who live in that region have a carrot variety or line that, you know, can withstand the environmental conditions or whatever it is that is, you know, lowering the vigor and germination of that variety. And it was done in consultation with, you know, the other growers who were part of that cohort of that breeding program. And, you know, sometimes I think we're too collaborative, but at the end of the day, I'm seeing people's faces, too collaborative in the sense that it takes a lot of time to email people, meet up with people, get the feedback, and then summarize the feedback, share the feedback, get more feedback. And it's great because we're hearing from all the voices that are in the program, but obviously it still takes a lot of time, energy, effort on everyone's end to share their voice. But the benefit of that is that everyone has a say in what we're doing. It's decentralized, but we try to make it democratic. But also, yeah, I think at the end of the day, we really try to do this work with the mantra of, like, you know, this work can't happen without all of us. And at the end of the day, like, you know, the University of British Columbia isn't the one that's going to be selling the seed. So why not support farmers who are going to steward those varieties in the future with something that they're really invested in and they really like. And yeah, those seeds hopefully will live on outside of CANOVI. I don't know if Alex or Abir have any other thoughts, or Weijia if she had thoughts.
I don't know, but we have a question. How much input do the farmers have in modifying the process?
I'm not sure how to say exactly how much is how much, but the way that how much a farmer can revise a process depends on where we are in the trial process. So I only started in this role just under 2 years ago, and for example, the lettuce variety trials started before I joined, and so the protocol was already developed, everything was done. So in that sense, the only time that there is room for changes or revision are when we do our end of the year seasonal surveys, where we ask growers, what did you not like? What would you like changed? Or sometimes if any of us are able to see a grower in person, we ask them 10 bajillion questions about how well we did. And usually, mostly everyone is very, there hasn't been like any extreme feedback where we've done anything completely wrong. But yeah, if you see like reports from year to year, you can see like if you look at a CANOVI report in like 2019 compared to 2024, they're completely different. But I'll say like, for example, this year is the first year that we're going to be doing a small cohort of bok choy growers. And we wrote a tentative protocol and we sent it out to certain growers that we felt like would be really interested in that kind of work. And we opened it up to feedback of, what do you think of the varieties? What do you think of that we're transplanting them? What do you think of how much space that we're asking you to dedicate towards that? And I think when it's in this beginning early stage process, growers have a lot of say in how that trial will run, and I can assure you we've gotten a lot of feedback on the bok choy work. So yeah, I think growers do get a lot of chance for feedback, but to what extent things are changed depends on where we are in a certain crop trial process.
I'll just, for the benefit of the person that asked online, I would say maybe one of the limitations in terms of grower feedback for this project is like, because this is predominantly grant funded through Agriculture and Agri-Food Canada's Organic Science Cluster grant, there were specific parameters in terms of the crops that we could work with. And so then within which was carrots and broadly salad greens for this project, and or leafy greens. So an ideal version of CANOVI would be one that isn't restricted by the crops that we can get funding for, but truly driven by farmer interests across the different regions of what crops they would like to trial, what crops they would like to breed or develop or pursue regional seed production for. So that is like a big limitation for the project. But then within the crops that we are working with, we try to make that process as participatory as possible with all of the opportunities for feedback that Michelle outlined. But I know that, that is feedback that we have received from farmers, as well as like feedback we receive from farmers without them having to say anything because they're just not interested in the crop. But as we evolve and think through how to make this work better or find different sources of funding, the ability to do truly kind of farmer-driven crop research, that would be something that I think we would all would want to be working towards.
Yeah, also a funny anecdote is, so this is our third and last year of running heat-tolerant lettuce trials, and at least internally on our team, all of us wanted to move on to a different leafy green because we were tired of lettuce, and all the growers were like, no, keep the lettuce. So they overrided our internal feelings on that. Cool, are there any more questions?
I have a question that, really this is just a little bit off topic, so legitimately, if no one else has a question, I will go ahead and ask this. I'm a Canada fangirl. I had the opportunity to spend some time in the Yukon and British Columbia last year, and so I pay attention to news in Canada, and you all had a postal strike that was kind of a big deal, and so I'm curious, did that affect the program? I feel like it happened late enough in the year that you all probably had all the materials that you needed, but like, what's your contingency plan? Because I know things aren't super stable in that area in Canada.
There was no contingency plan. I think we just got lucky because the postal strike happened in like November, December, and we do our seed order in February. So we were able to avoid that, but that was a challenge for a lot of our partners, and also just like the farmers we work with, the regional seed companies. I know that just like hearing from stories, what farmers, or like, and a lot of Canadian businesses did, is that they just withheld orders. Like they packed everything up and everything was ready to go, and they were just waiting for the postal strike to end. But yeah, like that was challenging because, you know, farmers are small business owners, like seed companies are small business owners, and it was a hard time because it was around Christmas. So a lot of people got upset that they couldn't get their Christmas presents through the mail or get things in time for Christmas. But I think during that time, you know, at least personally, I was trying to foster like empathy with the postal workers who deserve their wages, you know? And it was tough because at least the general public was kind of losing faith in the postal workers because Christmas, capitalism. So, yeah, but luckily, I mean, not luckily because basically they were forced to go back to work through government order. But yeah, I think because, I mean, again, if you do your seed order a little later, in the winter, you were able to avoid it. But like, for example, our partner, Seeds of Diversity, who they work a lot with growers and home gardeners, they had a backlog of seed envelopes in their office that they couldn't mail out appropriately to people in their program.
Thank you to Michelle and Craig and Weijia. Can we give them a round of applause, please? And many, many thank yous for sharing your perspective, for giving us an improvisation, and for answering all these wonderful questions. Thank you to the audience as well for engaging with this really, really cool topic. And with that, we are going to wrap up this session. I forgot it. And we're wrapping up the session. And if you have any feedback, please feel free to give it to us. We are more than happy to hear from you. So, there we go. Oh, just kidding. So you can scan this and submit your evaluation and tell us how amazing Michelle and Craig and Weijia are. Yes. Oh, thank you for the gift. Appreciated it.